وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري. In ayats 7 to 9 of Surah Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a very important concept which has different meanings and levels of understanding. That is the concept of Meezan. Surah Hud, ayat number 7 mentions, "And before the creation of the earth, his throne of authority operated on water, and from that he brought forth all manifestations of life and created you." My own understanding of this is that Allah's throne residing over water is a symbolic statement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When He decided to create all life from water, He subhanahu wa ta'ala established His authority by positioning Himself high above all creation, and hence created the heavens where He resides to establish the balance between Himself and all creation, which can be read in conjunction with ayat number 7 of Surah Rahman, where the same thing is being echoed. The significance of creating the heavens was important to establish a place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala issues commands from there to angels to carry out His tasks for all other creation on a daily basis. The first apparent meaning of Meezan is the scales or equipment that measure values and or ways of things. In ayat number 1 of Surah Al-Mutaffifin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a strong warning. Woe to those who gave less in measure or weight. The scales Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning here are those used to measure items for trade, where the value of the goods is determined by how much they weigh on the equipment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning those who defraud people by not using proper measures of the scale. In other places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again brings up the same issue. And in Surah Al-Araf, ayat number 85, Allah tells us the story of the people of Madian, where Shuaib alayhi salam was sent. He, subhanahu wa ta'ala, mentions, "So give full measure and weight, and do not decrease whilst giving people their things, nor create mischief in the land after reformation of the living conditions." Allah also advises us that when the scale is being used, we must weigh with a straight balance. The second meaning of Meezan is to establish adl or justice. This is best explained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself in Surah Al-Nahl, ayat number 90, where justice not only includes acts of ihsan towards everyone, but especially towards our near relatives, but it is also the forbidding of indecency, injustice, and rebellion. The concept of adl also includes the giving back to people with justice. Surah An-Nisa, ayat number 58, highlights this principle when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, "And when you rule over people, rule with justice. Or, and when you judge matters amongst people, give judgment with justice." This aspect of adl was best demonstrated by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was migrating from Makkah to Medina. Many of the Quraysh who wanted him dead were also the same people who had entrusted him with their possessions, as they had full and complete trust in him. They called him Al-Amin, the trustworthy. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left, he instructed Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu anhum to stay back in his stead and hand over each and every possession of those who had entrusted them with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now that is a person of the best moral character. Subhanallah. The third meaning of Meezan is the weighing of our scales of deeds on the Day of Judgment. What will be the weights that will be used to gauge and measure? It will indeed be our deeds. If we have done injustice towards others, it may not be hidden, and everything will be clear on that day in front of the Al-Mubin. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly mentions in ayat number 39 of Surah Rahman, that day no man or jinn will be asked about his sin, as they will be recognized by the darkness of their faces. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that whose scales of righteous deeds are heavy will be successful, but those whose scales of righteous deeds are light, it is they who have harmed their soul because they have been unjust to our revelations. It is also a bit complicated to note how the Meezan on the Day of Judgment will be used to measure good deeds, as there will be good deeds laced with ikhlas, sincerity of intention, which will be weighed differently from good deeds enmeshed with riya, showing off. The fourth meaning of Meezan is the hukum or instructions given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to try people when His standard of balance seems to be tilting. These may include afflictions in the form of tribulations on those who commit fraud with weights and measures. It may also include times of hardship like worries, famine, unemployment, or even pandemics like COVID-19. It may also come in the form of unjust rulers. These tribulations may impact the community at large, and only the unjust ones may not be the only recipient. Allah highlights this in Surah Al-Anfal in ayat number 25. He says, "But its victims will also include those who are accomplices in tyranny or who remain indifferent to it." By raising the sky, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the Meezan, balance. He is telling us to just look up in the sky and marvel at His seamless architecture, which is full of balance and scale. In fact, there is no futur, cracks, defects, or imperfections every time when we look up. This Ramzan, we must ask ourselves that if there is so much scale, proportion, and balance in the rest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, then why are we human beings so out of proportion and alignment in the way we conduct our affairs? Why is there such disbalance? We must understand that the Meezan is just not restricted to our trade and business relations. It includes all other relationships, especially those with our own selves. Therefore, we must prioritize our balance as per Allah's standard and not our own, i.e., with the truth and not our own feelings. And we must give the balance its due share, the bil qist, and prioritize where necessary first. Fabbi ayee aala rabbi kuma tukazibaan. Thank you for watching. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you found this reflection on Surah Rahman meaningful, please like and share with those who may benefit, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. May Allah's rahmah and barakah be with you and your loved ones this Ramzan and always. Ameen. Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram.